Have you ever wondered what really happens inside the church? When no one is looking, you think you know the church, you think you understand the rituals, the prayers, the songs. But what if everything you believed about this sacred place was not entirely true? What if the walls that you see as holy were hiding stories that could change the way you feel about faith forever? Imagine stepping into a place you have trusted all your life and realizing that there are secrets no one told you about, stories older than the building, stories that challenge what you thought was safe and familiar. The moment you hear them, you will never look at church the same way again. This is not a tale to scare you or to make you feel uncomfortable. This is a revelation, a window into truths that have been whispered for generations, yet rarely understood. The air in the church, the echoes of footsteps, the light that falls on the pews, all of it holds meaning beyond what meets the eye. And today I will take you through a journey that will open your mind and perhaps your heart to a new perspective. Even if you have been attending church for decades, even if you have never missed a Sunday, you will discover things that are astonishing, things that make you question the ordinary and see the extraordinary hiding in plain sight. You will meet characters who are like many of us, people who have faith, who have routine, who have comfort, but who stumble upon something so profound that their entire understanding of tradition is transformed. And as you listen closely, you will find yourself leaning and wanting to know what happens next, because what is about to unfold is more than a story. It is a path to seeing the familiar with new eyes, and by the end you may find yourself thinking about church in ways you never imagined and feeling emotions you have not felt in years: curiosity, wonder, and perhaps a quiet sense of awe. So get ready to step inside a world that has always been there, but that few have dared to truly understand. My name is Mary, and for many years I have dedicated my life to uncovering stories that are hidden in plain sight, stories that most people never hear, stories that carry wisdom and lessons for those who are willing to listen. I have traveled through villages, small towns, and communities, listening to elders, collecting tales from the past, learning from traditions that have shaped generations. And today I am here to share with you one of those stories, a story that will change the way you think about the church and about faith itself. I am not here to judge or to challenge your beliefs. I am here to open a door to a perspective that is rarely spoken about, a perspective that has survived centuries, quietly waiting for someone curious enough to pay attention. And as someone who has spent decades listening to these voices, I can tell you that what you are about to hear is powerful and relevant, whether you have been going to church for 50 years or whether you are just reflecting on faith in your own time. You will recognize yourself in these stories. You will see your own questions, your own doubts, your own experiences mirrored in the journey of others. And that is why it is so important to listen closely and follow the story all the way to the end, because every detail matters, every moment carries meaning, and every revelation builds on the one before it. As we move forward together through this story, I want you to feel that you are not alone, that you are part of a long chain of people who have sought understanding, who have questioned the familiar, and who have found unexpected truths that can transform the way they live and the way they connect with the world. So stay with me, keep your mind open and your heart ready, because the journey we are about to take is intimate, engaging, and surprising. And it begins right now with a truth that most of us never notice, a truth that will change everything you thought you knew about the place where you have prayed, the songs you have sung, the rituals you have followed for decades. And as you listen, I want you to remember that this is not just a story. This is an invitation to see with new eyes and to feel with new depth. Most people believe that the church is a place of complete safety, a sanctuary where everything is familiar, where every ritual, every word, every gesture has been repeated for generations. And yet the truth that few speak about is that there are layers within those walls, layers that carry meanings and histories that are not immediately visible. You may have sat in the same pew for years, sung the same hymns, followed the same prayers, and thought that you understood everything about your place of worship, but hidden beneath the surface are stories from centuries past, stories that challenge what we assume about faith and devotion, stories that reveal that the familiar is not always what it seems. Consider for a moment the elders of ancient communities who understood symbols and signs that were passed down in whispers, who knew that the rituals performed in sacred spaces were more than routine. They were coded messages carrying lessons about morality, about courage, about choices that affect generations. These messages were never written in books or taught in sermons. They were carried in songs and gestures, in the way light fell on certain corners of the room, or in the quiet moments when no one else was watching. And when you hear these stories today, you realize that what we call normal is often just the surface of something far deeper and far more meaningful. Think about the moments when you have felt a sense of awe inside a church, a feeling that something unseen was present, guiding, protecting, revealing. Now imagine that feeling amplified, multiplied by centuries of knowledge, of experiences of people who came before you, who left subtle signs and hints for those wise enough to notice. The ordinary suddenly becomes extraordinary. The songs you have sung, your prayers, your quiet reflections, all gain new layers of meaning. You begin to see that the very space you trusted so completely is also a place of discovery, a place where truths can be revealed to those who are willing to look. beyond the obvious and question the unquestioned. And yet this revelation is not meant to frighten, it is meant to awaken your curiosity, to open your mind to the possibility that even in a place where tradition is strongest, there is room for wonder, for insight, for transformation. And this is the moment where your expectations are broken, where you understand that familiarity does not equal understanding, that faith does not mean blind acceptance, and that by paying attention to what has always been, there you can uncover wisdom that is as alive today as it was hundreds of years ago. And as you follow this story, you will meet a character who embodies this very journey, an elder like yourself, someone who trusted the rituals, who sought comfort in the routine, and yet stumbled upon a revelation that changed everything. This is where the ordinary and the extraordinary collide, and where your journey begins alongside theirs as you prepare to see the church not just as a building, not just as a place of prayer, but as a living archive of hidden truths and secret lessons waiting to be discovered by those who dare to notice. There was an elderly man in a small village, known to everyone as a man of faith, a man who never missed a service, a man whose presence in the church brought comfort and respect to those around him. He had lived in the same town all his life, seen generations grow up and leave, and return to watch new children play in the same courtyards where he had once played himself. He was a man of routine, rising early, praying silently, walking to the church every Sunday without fail. Yet despite the devotion, despite the consistency, there was a quiet restlessness within him, a sense that something was missing, something he could not name. No matter how many hymns he sang or how many sermons he attended, he felt a gap, a shadow in his understanding of faith. He often wondered if others felt it too, if behind the smiles and nods of agreement, there was a hidden layer that no one dared to speak of. One day, as he sat in the sunlit pew listening to the familiar songs, he noticed a slight movement at the edge of his vision, a shadow, almost imperceptible, a flicker of someone passing along the back corridors of the church. And although he tried to dismiss it, he could not shake the feeling that it was a message meant for him, a guide, a hint, or perhaps an invitation. He began to pay closer attention to the small details, the way the candles flickered in the morning light, the pattern of shadows cast by the wooden beams, the way the choir's harmonies seemed to shift subtly when the sunlight touched certain corners. And in these subtle observations, he began to sense that there was an order, a code, a message hidden in plain sight, a story embedded in the rituals that no one had ever explained to him. And this realization both thrilled and unsettled him. It was as if the very walls of the church were alive, whispering secrets from generations past, calling him to pay attention to things that everyone else overlooked. From that moment, he became more than a participant. He became an observer, a seeker, someone who looked beyond the surface, at the patterns, the movements, the silences. He began to notice small acts of kindness, gestures that seemed ordinary but carried hidden significance, the way a hand rested lightly on a shoulder, the way a nod was given at a precise moment in the service, the way eyes met in quiet understanding. And with each observation, he felt the stirrings of a new understanding forming within him. He realized that faith was not merely about following the rules or participating in rituals. It was about noticing, understanding, interpreting, and internalizing the subtle lessons woven into the very fabric of the sacred space. And as he absorbed these lessons, he felt a sense of anticipation, a curiosity growing inside him, a readiness for something more, something that would challenge everything he thought he knew. And as he leaned forward in his pew, listening to the faint whispers of the past, he did not yet know that the revelation that awaited him would change not only the way he saw the church, but the way he saw himself, the choices he made, and the way he connected with the world around him. And the story he was about to experience would take him on a journey that blended tradition with discovery, faith with insight, and routine with revelation. And as you follow along, you will see how, even in the simplest life, the extraordinary can appear when one is willing to notice, to listen, and to believe that there is more than meets the eye in every familiar place. Despite his devotion, despite his careful attention to every detail of the church, the elderly man could not shake the feeling that something essential was missing, that there was a deeper truth hidden behind the familiar rituals. He began to notice contradictions, small inconsistencies that puzzled him. When the priest spoke of faith and obedience, he wondered why some actions were emphasized while others were quietly ignored. When the choir sang hymns that had been repeated for decades, he felt a subtle tension between the words and the melody, as if a part of the story was being left out. These realizations stirred unease in him, but also a growing desire to understand, to uncover the hidden layer of meaning that seemed just beyond his reach. He began to ask questions quietly to himself. Why do we follow these traditions? What is the purpose of each ritual? Why do certain gestures carry more weight than others? And as these questions multiplied, so did his sense of restlessness. It was not Discomfort born from doubt, but from curiosity, a curiosity that demanded exploration, a curiosity that could not be satisfied with routine or repetition. He tried to share his feelings with fellow parishioners, but they dismissed his concerns as unnecessary overthinking or aging imagination, and this only deepened his sense of isolation. He felt alone in noticing the invisible, the subtle, the things that mattered most. To him, he watched others move through the church with ease, with faith unquestioning, with a sense of certainty that he longed for, and yet he could not deny the stirrings inside him, the growing awareness that something extraordinary was hidden beneath the ordinary, that the rituals, the prayers, and the songs were not merely exercises in devotion, but a code, a language waiting to be deciphered. He began to reflect on his life, on the choices he had made, on the moments he had accepted things as they were without noticing the deeper meaning, and in doing so, he felt both regret and hope. Regret for the years spent overlooking the lessons hidden in plain sight, and hope for the possibility that it was not too late, that he could still understand, still discover, still transform his faith into something richer, fuller, and more alive. And as he wrestled with this tension between routine and revelation, between comfort and discovery, he realized that the only way forward was to follow the whispers, to pay attention to the details, to allow curiosity to guide him even if it meant challenging everything he had believed for decades. And with that decision, a new path opened before him, a path that would lead him into stories and secrets that few had ever known, a path that would transform not only his understanding of the church, but his understanding of life itself. And as you continue to follow this story, you will see how this conflict between the familiar and the unknown sets the stage for a discovery so profound that it will change everything for him, and perhaps even for you. One afternoon, as the elderly man wandered through the quiet corridors behind the main hall of the church, he noticed an old wooden door partially hidden by shadows, a door he had passed countless times without seeing before. It was simple, unassuming, yet something about it called to him, a sense of anticipation tingling through his fingers and into his chest. He reached out slowly and pushed the door open to reveal a narrow staircase descending into darkness. At first, he hesitated, the familiar fear of the unknown tugging at him, yet curiosity stronger than caution propelled him forward. Step by step the air grew cooler, the sounds of the church above fading until only the quiet rhythm of his heartbeat remained. As he descended, he realized he was entering a space forgotten by most, a space where the walls were lined with faded manuscript sketches and symbols that seemed to hum with history, with secrets accumulated over centuries. He ran his hands along the rough wooden rail, feeling the vibrations of stories untold, and then he noticed a figure at the end of the corridor, an elder from a distant village, a storyteller who had traveled extensively and carried with him knowledge from ancient communities whose traditions predated even the oldest buildings of the church. The elder welcomed him not with words, but with a gesture, a nod that invited him to sit and listen, and as the man took his place, he began to hear stories that challenged everything he thought he knew about faith, the rituals, the prayers, the songs. Each story was a layer, a key to unlocking hidden meanings embedded in every corner of the church. He learned how the flicker of candlelight at certain times of day was used to signal moments of reflection, how the positioning of the pews created a subtle map of moral lessons, how the hymns contained coded messages of courage, hope, and compassion, messages that only those who listened deeply could understand. He discovered that generations before had deliberately hidden these lessons to protect them, to ensure they would only be passed to those patient enough to notice, to those willing to see beyond the obvious. As he absorbed these revelations, he felt a shift within himself, a new lens forming through which he could view not only the church, but the world around him. He began to see patterns in his own life mirrored in the stories he heard, patterns of choice, consequence, faith, and understanding that had always been present but had gone unnoticed. Now the ordinary became extraordinary, each ritual, each gesture, each word a clue, a lesson, a gift waiting to be received. He realized that the emptiness he had felt for decades was not a lack of faith, but a lack of awareness, a lack of noticing the subtle truths hidden in plain sight. And with this understanding, a sense of peace and exhilaration flooded through him. He could feel his heart opening to the depth of meaning that had always existed, yet had been invisible. Until now, the discovery was profound, not only intellectually, but emotionally, spiritually, and practically. It transformed the way he would interact with the church, with his neighbors, with his family, and with himself. The hidden truths became a guide, a map, a set of principles that could be applied to daily life, to enrich experience, to deepen understanding, to create connection. And as he rose from his seat with the elder beside him, he knew that he had stepped into a new chapter of life, one where curiosity, observation, and insight would guide his faith far beyond the ordinary into a realm where the sacred and the discovered merged seamlessly, and as you continue to listen to this story, you will see how this transformation prepares him for the ultimate, understanding the lesson that connects every hidden detail to a purpose greater than routine and a meaning deeper than he ever imagined. As the elderly man returned to the main hall of the church, the familiar space now appeared completely transformed to his eyes. The light that filtered through the stained glass painted messages on the walls that he had never seen before. The pews aligned in a pattern that told stories of moral courage and communal care. The hymn sung by the choir carried meanings he could now decode, and the prayers he had repeated for decades resonated with new depth. Each element of the service no longer routine, no longer habitual, but alive, pulsing with intention and wisdom. He felt a profound sense of connection not only to the space, but to the generations that had come before him, and to those who would come after. He understood that faith was not passive, it was active. It was observation, interpretation, engagement, and participation. It was noticing the invisible, listening to the whispers of the past, and integrating that knowledge into daily life. He began to see how the lessons he had learned from the elder could be applied to his interactions with family, neighbors, and friends, how small acts of attention, compassion, and understanding could ripple outward, creating change far beyond what he had imagined. He realized that the emptiness he had felt for years had been replaced with clarity, with purpose, with insight that gave him energy and hope. And as he knelt at the altar, he did not simply repeat prayers, he reflected on their meaning, on how they connected to his life, to his choices, to his values. And he felt a sense of peace, joy, and empowerment he had never experienced before. This transformation was not sudden, it had grown over weeks, months, as he practiced noticing, as he observed, as he integrated the hidden lessons into his own understanding. And yet the change was undeniable. He saw the church not just as a building, but as a living teacher, as a repository of wisdom, as a guide for action and decision. And as he shared his new understanding with those around him, slowly, at first, then with increasing confidence, he noticed that others began to perceive the space differently as well. They noticed small details that had previously escaped their attention. They asked questions, they listened more closely, and a subtle shift began to occur in the community, a shift from routine to awareness, from habit to insight, from passive faith to active understanding. He felt gratitude for the elders who had preserved these hidden lessons for generations, for the patience and curiosity that had guided him, and for the courage it had taken to step beyond comfort and routine into the unknown. And as he walked through the church on a Sunday morning, no longer merely attending, but fully engaging, fully aware, he felt a sense of fulfillment that transcended his years, a sense that every step, every observation, every prayer was part of a continuum, a living conversation between past, present, and future. And as you hear this story, it becomes clear that transformation is possible at any age, that curiosity and attention can unlock meaning in places we have overlooked, that the familiar can become extraordinary, and that faith, like life, is not static. It is a journey of discovery and growth and integration into this new understanding. He embraced the joy of noticing the beauty in small gestures, the power of understanding hidden lessons, the depth of connection to tradition and community. And as he continued his journey in the church and in life, he carried with him a sense of purpose, clarity, and insight that would guide him for the rest of his days, a living proof that even in the most familiar spaces, the extraordinary awaits those who are willing to see, to listen, to learn, and to transform. The story of the elderly man reveals a truth that is not only inspiring but deeply practical for anyone, especially those over 65 who want to find more meaning in their daily life, more depth in their faith, and more joy in the ordinary. The first lesson is to notice everything, even the smallest details, the flicker of light across a wall, the cadence of a song, the placement of objects around you. These seemingly trivial things carry messages, lessons, and insights waiting to be discovered. When you pay attention to them, you begin to see patterns, connections, and truths that were invisible before. This practice of observation does not require youth strength or special skill. It only requires presence, patience, and curiosity. The second lesson is to question without fear, to ask, why do I do this? Why does this matter? What is beneath the surface? These questions are not signs of doubt, but of engagement. They awaken your mind and open doors to understanding that routine alone cannot provide. Asking questions allows you to take ownership of your beliefs, your practices, and your life. The third lesson is to integrate what you learn into your daily routine. Noticing alone is not enough. You must act upon what you discover, apply the insights to your interactions with others, to the choices you make, to the way you approach challenges and joys. This integration transforms knowledge into wisdom and wisdom into meaningful change in your life. The fourth lesson is to embrace curiosity as a Lifelong companion. It does not matter how many years you have lived, curiosity is not reserved for the young. It is the key to continuous growth, transformation, and fulfillment. As the elderly man discovered, curiosity allowed him to see the extraordinary in the ordinary, to decode hidden messages, to enrich his faith and his life in practical ways. The fifth lesson is to share your discoveries with others. Teaching and guiding, even in small ways, creates a ripple effect, bringing awareness and inspiration to your community and loved ones. The sixth lesson is to be patient with yourself. Change does not happen instantly. It grows gradually, like a seed, absorbing light, water, and nutrients over time. By practicing observation, questioning, integrating curiosity, and sharing, you cultivate a life of insight, understanding, and purpose. The seventh lesson is to understand that the familiar is never fully known until you look deeper. What seems ordinary is often extraordinary when approached with attention, care, and reflection. The rituals and routines you have followed for years can reveal hidden wisdom when you approach them with presence and intent. The eighth lesson is to connect your insights to action. Faith and understanding are not static. They are lived, they are enacted, and they gain power when expressed through behavior, choices, and relationships, as the elderly man found by integrating his discoveries into his life. His entire experience of the church and of daily living was transformed. The ninth lesson is to recognize that transformation is possible at any age. It is never too late to begin to see more clearly, to notice more deeply, to engage more fully, and to live more meaningfully. The 10th lesson is to carry these lessons into every aspect of your life, to let observation, curiosity, integration, patience, and sharing guide not only your spiritual life, but your relationships, your health, your hobbies, your learning, and your contributions to others. When you practice these principles consistently, you create a life rich in insight, joy, connection, and purpose. You move from routine to awareness, from habit to active engagement, from passive acceptance to empowered understanding. And finally, you realize that every moment holds potential for discovery, that the ordinary can become extraordinary, that faith can deepen, and that you can cultivate clarity, joy, and connection in your life starting today, right now, simply by choosing to notice, to question, to integrate, to be curious, and to share. And by doing this, you honor yourself, your history, and your future. And like the elderly man, you too can experience a transformation that opens your mind, your heart, and your life to a richness that you never thought possible. Now that you have followed the journey of the elderly man and discovered the hidden truths within the church, it is your turn to take action to make these lessons alive in your own life. You can start right now by paying attention to the small details around you, noticing the patterns, the hidden messages, and the subtle connections that often go overlooked. You can ask questions, reflect on what they mean, and how they apply to your experiences. And just as the man integrated his discoveries into his daily life, you can take what you learn and apply it to your relationships, your routines, your personal growth, and your spiritual journey. Every choice you make with awareness, every act of curiosity and attention creates ripples that enhance your life and the lives of those around you. And if this story has inspired you, if it has opened your mind or touched your heart, the next step is simple and immediate. You can support this channel by liking this video, sharing it with someone who would benefit from these insights, commenting below with your thoughts, experiences, or questions, and subscribing to the channel so you never miss a story that challenges perception and offers practical wisdom. And right now, before you forget, click the like button, share your reflection, and hit subscribe to join a community committed to learning, growing, and transforming at any age. And as a final gift before we conclude, there is another video waiting for you on this channel, a story equally fascinating, a journey that will expand your mind and deepen your understanding. It is appearing on the screen right now, and watching it will continue the path you have begun, connecting discovery, curiosity, and insight. So do not wait, follow the link and continue exploring the hidden layers of meaning in everyday life. And as you take these actions, remember that transformation is possible every day, every moment, and that by noticing, engaging, and applying what you learn, you cultivate a life rich in insight, purpose, and joy. And as we close this chapter, remember that the journey does not end here. It continues in your thoughts, your observations, your choices, your interactions, and your experiences. And with each step you take, you honor the wisdom of the past, the possibilities of the present, and the promise of the future. And now go forward with courage, curiosity, and clarity, knowing that you have the power to transform your life, just as the elderly man did. And let every day be an opportunity to see the extraordinary hidden within the ordinary, to engage fully with the world around you, and to share your discoveries and insights with others. For the more you notice, the more you learn, the more you grow, and the more you inspire those who follow your path. And so take this moment, take these lessons, and make them your start today. Embrace curiosity, observation, integration, and sharing, and let the transformation begin in your life now.